I lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment on the edge of town while finishing college. Nothing special about the place. It was old, cheap, and the kind of building where every noise had an explanation. Pipes rattled, floors creaked, neighbors argued through thin walls. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. The first strange thing happened on a Tuesday. I came home from class and found one of my kitchen cabinets hanging open. I distinctly remembered closing it that morning. I stood there staring at it for a few seconds before laughing at myself. I must have forgotten. I shut the cabinet and moved on. A few days later, I noticed that some of the leftovers I'd made the night before seemed different. Not gone, just less. A spoonful here, a bite there. Again, I blame myself. Maybe I ate more than I remembered. Maybe I was tired. Final exams were approaching and stress does strange things to memory. Then my dog started acting weird. His name was Milo. He was normally fearless. One night while I was watching TV, he suddenly stood up and stared down the dark hallway leading to my bedroom. Just stared, ears up, body stiff. I called his name, nothing. He kept looking into the darkness. Eventually he relaxed and I forgot about it. But it started happening more often. He would stare at the hallway, the bathroom, the bedroom door, places where there was never anyone. Sometimes he would growl softly, not aggressively, almost nervously, the kind of sound animals make when they're unsure. I took him to the vet. The vet found nothing wrong. A week later, I woke up around 3 a.m. At first, I wasn't sure what had awakened me. Then I heard it, a soft sound, like a footstep. My apartment was silent. I sat upright in bed listening. Nothing, no second sound, no movement. After several minutes, I convinced myself it had come from another apartment. I went back to sleep. The next morning, my bedroom door was open. I always slept with it closed. Always. That bothered me more than I wanted to admit. For the first time, I checked every room before leaving for class. Closets, bathroom, kitchen, nothing. Everything was normal, or so it seemed. Over the next 2 weeks, little things kept happening. A blanket I left crumpled on the couch would be neatly folded. A lamp I never used would be switched on. One of my dining chairs would be slightly out of place. Every incident had a reasonable explanation. Every incident could be blamed on forgetfulness. But together they started forming a pattern, and I hated that pattern. One evening I invited a friend over. I casually mentioned the strange things. She laughed. "You're stressed." I laughed too, because that explanation was comforting. Stress was better than the alternative. A few nights later, I woke up thirsty. I walked into the kitchen and froze. One of the cabinets was open again. The same cabinet. I hadn't used it all day. I stood there in the darkness staring at it. Something felt wrong. Not scary, wrong. Like walking into a room and realizing someone had moved everything half an inch to the left. I checked the apartment. Nothing. No signs of forced entry. No broken locks. Nothing. Still, I bought a cheap security camera online. It arrived 3 days later. I never got around to installing it. That decision still bothers me. The following Saturday, I left for class in the morning and returned earlier than expected. As I unlocked my apartment door, I noticed something strange. The deadbolt was already unlocked. I clearly remembered locking it. For several seconds, I stood in the hallway staring at the door. Then I convinced myself I was imagining things. Again, I walked inside. Nothing looked unusual. No missing valuables. No signs of entry. No indication that anyone had been there. I almost felt embarrassed for being nervous. Then Milo began growling. Low. Continuous. His eyes were fixed on my bedroom. I told him to stop. He wouldn't. I eventually closed the bedroom door and spent the rest of the evening in the living room. That night I slept poorly. I kept waking up, kept hearing tiny sounds, a creak, a shift, a faint scrape. The building was old. Old buildings make noise. That's what I told myself. The next afternoon, everything changed. I came home carrying groceries. Milo wasn't with me because he'd spent the day at a friend's house. The apartment was quiet. Normal. I put the groceries away and walked into my bedroom to change clothes. Halfway across the room, something caught my attention. At first, my brain didn't understand what I was seeing. A pair of shoes, dirty shoes, sticking out from beneath my bed. For a second, I just stared. My mind searched desperately for explanations. Maybe I'd kicked something under there. Maybe... Then reality hit. Those weren't my shoes. I lived alone. Someone was under my bed. The feeling that followed is impossible to describe. Every sound disappeared. My heart seemed to stop. The world narrowed to those shoes. I knew if I panicked, I might die, so I did the only thing I could think of. I pretended I hadn't noticed. I turned around calmly, walked out of the room, walked into the living room, picked up my phone, called 911. The dispatcher immediately told me to leave. I headed for the front door. I was only a few feet away when I heard movement. Fast movement behind me. A scraping sound. Then footsteps. I didn't look back. I ran. I threw open the door and sprinted into the hallway. As I reached the stairwell, I heard someone emerge from my bedroom. Someone had been there. Someone had been watching. I kept running until I reached the parking lot. The police arrived within minutes. They entered the apartment. I waited outside, shaking so badly I could barely stand. Eventually, an officer approached me. They had found him, a man in his 30s, homeless. No connection to me, no explanation for why he chose my apartment. Then the officer asked a question. "Do you usually shower when you get home?" I nodded. "Almost every day." The officer looked uncomfortable. He told me they had recovered one of my kitchen knives. The man had taken it from a drawer. According to investigators, he had been hiding and waiting for me to go into the bathroom. The officer didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. I understood. Over the following days, police found more evidence. Food wrappers, water bottles, personal belongings hidden in a crawl space above the bathroom ceiling. Evidence suggesting he had been entering my apartment for weeks, possibly longer. The open cabinets, the missing food, the folded blanket, the footsteps, the growling dog, all of it suddenly made sense. The most terrifying part wasn't discovering him under my bed. It wasn't the knife. It wasn't even realizing how close I came to walking into that bathroom. The worst part came later, lying awake at night, replaying every strange moment from the previous month. Every sound, every movement, every uneasy feeling, trying to determine when he first entered my apartment, trying to figure out how many times we'd been in the same room together without me knowing. I never found the answer. And that's the part that still keeps me awake, because I don't know when he first got inside. I only know the day I finally noticed he was there.